Everyone loves Wii Sports Resort, right? Whether you're cutting down the opposition in swordplay, riding the waves in wakeboarding, or shooting hoops on the basketball court, you're pretty much guaranteed to have a blast, no matter which sport is your favourite. The thing that I personally enjoy most about this game isn't quite what you'd expect though. It's actually just a humble side mode, tucked away in the air sports section of the menu, but it's one that hides a lot more depth than it would first appear. Of course, I'm talking about Island Flyover, a fantastic little minigame which lets you fly around Wuhu Island to your heart's content. In most cases, Wii Sports Resort uses the Motion Plus accessory for actions like swinging a table tennis paddle, throwing a frisbee, or drawing a bow. Here, however, you instead use it to take control of a plane, tilting your Wii remote to steer it and thrusting it forwards to, well, thrust the plane forwards. The objective is pretty simple. Scattered across the island, you'll find these eye points, which are located at various points of interest like the Red Iron Bridge and the Big Lighthouse, or Giant Candle as it's called in-game. In total, there are 80 of these points to find, and flying into them provides you with information about the particular landmark they're associated with, like how they accidentally built the Giant Candle at twice its intended size. It's pretty interesting to learn about the backstory of Wuhu Island, and gives the place a lot more personality than it would otherwise have. Some of these points are placed in really cool areas, like with this massive blimp flying above the island and a lakeside castle high up in the mountains. There's also this whole network of underground caves, which are tricky to fly through without crashing your plane, as evidenced by my supreme piloting skills here. One of the eye points can even be found inside Wuhu, the volcano, and just don't question how the plane is able to fly perfectly unharmed in here, it's fine. What I find neat is that many of these points mark out the sites where the other sports are played, like how you've got the bowling alley and basketball courts in the main square, the frisbee area on the beach, and the wakeboarding area in the sea. It helps to tie all of the sports together and gives the sense that they aren't just isolated minigames that you play in a vacuum, rather, they all have a place on the island. Even the ones that aren't marked out by eye points, like the exact roads used for cycling and the rivers for canoeing, are still modelled out here and you can follow them all around the island. Everything just feels so cohesive and interconnected, making Wuhu Island feel like a living, breathing world and unifying what would otherwise be a mere collection of smaller games together. No matter how much you look around the mainland though, you won't find the golf course. What you might notice when flying around is that there are actually some smaller islands off in the distance, the largest and furthest away of which being the Wedge Island. It takes a while to get to, and you'll probably spend a large proportion of your allocated 5 minutes just reaching it. As you may have guessed, it's here that you find the golf course as well as a hotel and some sweet rock formations. In total, there are 6 eye points found here, so it's worth your while to go to. Finding this place for the first time was a pleasant surprise, as I didn't expect there to be such a fleshed out area just for the golf. Now, some of you may be wondering how the residents get from Wuhu Island to Wedge Island, but the game even thought of that. There's actually a ferry that travels between them known as the Wedge Island Marina, which of course counts as an eye point of its own. Now, while the points on Wedge Island are pretty far off the beaten path, others are even more well hidden and can take a long time to find. Naturally, on your first few runs you'll find a ton of new ones, but as your collection builds up, these numbers dwindle. You'll usually be left with about 5 or 6 points that you can't seem to find no matter how hard you look. I mean, personally, it took me ages to find the secluded beach at the very end of the island. I think it was the only point that I didn't find on my childhood save. If you are struggling to find certain areas, there is something, or rather someone, who can help you with that. Enter Miguel, a pilot and tour guide who does a regular circuit of the island. There are a few different paths that you can take depending on the time of day, and by following him, you can find some of the points that you might be missing, like in my case, the diving spot over here, just behind this small island. As you find more and more of these eye points, you'll unlock a few bonuses. Some of these are purely cosmetic, like how you can fly a 2-seater plane instead of the normal one, or have your own personal cottage built on one of the smaller islands. Then there's the blimp, which is normally decorated with the Wii logo. Once you find enough points, however, it's replaced with a massive picture of your Mii's face, and I'm not entirely sure who decided to make this a feature, but whoever you are, thank you. You can also unlock balloons to shoot all around the island, which provides a fun side objective to do in between finding eye points. While doing this doesn't give you anything major, you can get a stamp for popping 150 of them in one flight, which is made easier by unlocking the double missiles, another reward for getting points. The most important bonus, however, is the ability to change the time of day that you set off at. When you first play this mode, you start off in the daytime, but eventually you'll be able to take flight in the evening and at night too. This gives the island a completely different vibe. I always loved the sunset and the orange lighting provided by the evening, so that was always my go-to. The nighttime is honestly kinda beautiful as well. Seeing Wuhu Island all lit up and watching the fireworks set off with the view of the moon in the background, it's just, chef's kiss, man. Now, while the eye point locations are the same between the different times, the descriptions are actually unique. For example, you'll find this expert canoeist out at sea who'll brag about his skills in the morning and starts to complain about being hungry later on in the day. There's also this entrance to the cave known as the Mysterious Ruins, and in the daytime, the description is pretty bog standard. If you go there at night though, the text instead tells you that you can occasionally hear eerie singing coming from the cave, and if you go inside, you do actually hear a voice coming from seemingly nowhere. Take a listen for yourself. It's a neat detail, and Island Flyover has a ton of Easter eggs like this to find, like how when you fly upside down in the two-seater plane, your poor passenger will flail their arms around in the air in fear. Another one can be found when you fly past the new town, where you can hear someone playing Super Mario Bros. On the NES. Then there's also this little cottage, which you'll find in the Blue Lagoon hideaway. It's right where you start off in the evening, but if you carefully hover around the area without crashing your plane, then you'll hear some music coming from the cottage. What's playing is a pleasant, relaxing, acoustic rendition of the Wii Sports theme, and there are actually 3 different versions of it, depending on what time of day you listen out for it. This is such a minute detail that they really didn't have to go out of their way to add. I mean, the majority of people who played this game would probably never even hear this theme, but it just shows how much care was put into this mode. Another secret can be found by flying around next to the big candle, where you'll hear this weird, staticky sound. As it turns out, what you're actually hearing here are Morse code messages being sent, which, when decoded, reveal some pretty amusing text, like, why does anyone use Morse code anymore, and does anyone out there know Morse code? I don't know why they went to such great lengths to put this into the game, but I'm all for it. Island Flyover was truly a labour of love, and this level of depth really showcases that. For a side mode in a game filled with much more conventionally enjoyable and action-packed sports, it provided a unique contrast with its relaxed pace and free-roaming nature. It's something that I often find myself coming back to, so I can wind down and relive the joys of exploring every nook and cranny to find all of those eye points. It's a shame that Wuhu Island has sort of faded into obscurity as of late, and didn't make its return in Switch Sports as it was packed with personality. I feel like a lot of that charm was owed to Island Flyover, so hey, to this cozy, underappreciated, and quite honestly brilliant mode, thank you.